I thought some of the testimony and evidence we got today that was the most striking, particularly in that second act. We were all prepared for the window of time between the lip speech and the Rose Garden, when he finally begrudgingly says, "Go home, I love you, you're very special to me." But the period of time after that, where we got a whole bunch of new tape that we saw, new evidence, the associate White House counsel saying that they all kind of turned in for the day because they were emotionally exhausted. This is at 4:15. The Capitol's still not cleared. That
active hand-to-hand combat
still happening. Donald Trump essentially flicking over his king and going home, right? Like the chessboard. And everyone else in the White House kind of doing the same. Well, we're done here. And the hand-to-hand combat continuing at the Capitol. And that footage I found very powerful and moving. We've never seen before, which is the congressional leaders huddled in the Capitol with the Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, asking how long is it going to take to clear the Capitol so we can go and do the people's duty to transfer power peacefully. Never seen that before. That entire mop-up job, the actual physical clearing of the Capitol and the actual peaceful transfer of power happens after that. They all just check out. Like, he basically says, I'm not getting the coup I wanted. And then the sort of cherry on top, the phone calls to the senators after that from Rudy Giuliani. Again, a piece of information we knew, some tape that we've all played, I think, probably on our programs at various points, that in the context of the presentation, to me, packed even more of a kind of desperate punch.
I'm going to go to the control room on this before we move on from this point. The sound that Chris is talking about in terms of the congressional leadership on the phone with the Secretary of Defense, I believe that we've got that cut. Can you guys tell me if we can? We'll be able to play that in just 1 second. Again, we have known a little bit, actually not very much, about the location and behavior of congressional leadership. We knew that they were involved in trying to enlist some sort of law enforcement or military response to come physically save the U.S. Capitol so the government would not be toppled, so the Capitol would not be overrun by the insurrectionists. I think what was striking to me in this moment was it's kind of like when you cover national security moments in history. And if they're far enough back in history, you forget which party the relevant politicians were when you're looking at that national security moment. It was one of those national security moments where it did not matter. There was no distinction between either house or either party when you saw these leaders trying to save the country. Watch.
Other leaders honored their oaths and acted to clear the Capitol and resume the joint session. For instance, here are never-before-seen photos and video of congressional leaders in action during the attack. The video is a portion of a call they had at approximately 4:45 with Acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller.
We're not going to let these people keep us from finishing our business, so we need you to get the building cleared, give us the okay so we can go back in session and finish up the people's business as soon as possible.
Mr. Secretary and Senator Schumer, some people here in the Capitol Police believe it would take us several days to secure the building. Do you agree with that analysis?
I'm not on the ground, but I do not agree with that analysis.
So what is the earliest that we could safely resume our proceedings in the Senate and House chambers? The earliest we could safely resume?
Here's my assessment, but I prefer to be on the ground, which I personally would prefer to be right now, but I need to be here. I would say, best case, we're looking at 4 to 5 hours.
Remarkable footage, never seen before. These are congressional leaders on the phone with the Secretary of Defense. We know from other testimony we saw tonight from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, that Vice President Pence was directly in touch with the military as well. President Trump not speaking to the military, not speaking to law enforcement, not speaking to Homeland Security or anybody, while we now can see these other leaders trying to do it, even though they're not even in the chain of command.
I have always been so struck by the absence of a clear commander-in-chief of the United States of America. And the Pottinger testimony brings you back to the fact that, we can become so self-focused on this, but the world over, our allies and our adversaries had no idea who was running our country. It is clear that that question, they come closer to answering it than anyone else has. But we know Speaker Pelosi was talking to General Milley. We know that the Senate leaders, I mean, they were all there on the phone with Chris Miller. We know the vice president from the basement, after his near brush with death, was talking to them. Trump, I mean, this was about dereliction of duty. This was about abdication of his job.
I mean, in history, we're so focused on, like, the moment when a president was having a colonoscopy and was out for 14 minutes.
Right.
And who was in charge of the country then?
Right.
I mean, this was
I wrote that
hours.
press release when it was Dick Cheney.
But by the way,
This is
you even
hours.
have Mark Milley talking to Meadows, and what Meadows wants him to do is, well, we need to kill the narrative that the vice president is making all the decisions. Like, his concern is make sure the narrative isn't that the vice president is making all the decisions, because he actually is.
And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is like,
It's like,
you want
no.
me to kill the narrative?
He's like, I don't do narrative.
I do killing. I definitely
narrative.
don't kill narratives.